All right, so for our team book review, we read Paleofantasy: What Evolution Really Tells Us About Sex, Diet, and How We Live by Marlene Zook. This was done by me, Rebecca, Kira, and Nathan. So just to start off, a little bit about the author, Marlene Zook. So Dr. Zook is an American biologist and ecologist. She is currently 67 years old, and she is a professor of ecology, evolution, and behavior at the University of Minnesota. Currently, she's held some other positions at other universities in the past. But anyway, she published Paleofantasy in 2013, and since then became a pretty popular book. Um, throughout Throughout her career, she's been a pretty public critic of the Paleolithic diet in general, and her research interests include sexual behavior, mate choice, and animal behavior. So for the intro, I'm just kind of want to touch on some of the main points in the book. The most important thing being the paleo lifestyle. So Paleofantasy takes a deep dive into the basis of this paleo lifestyle, and that's the concept centered around the idea that we should eat, exercise, and live just as our ancestors did so that we can live a healthier lifestyle. So I just want to talk about that for a second. Terms like paleo diet and Paleolithic lifestyle had become very popular during the early 2000s, following a publication of a book called The Paleo Diet: Lose Weight and Get Healthy by Eating the Foods You Were Designed to Eat by Lauren Cordain, and that was published in 2002. So since that, the whole paleo diet trend has really taken off. So typical paleo dieters' food choices would consist of only things that could be hunted, fish, or gathered. So those would be obviously foods like fish, meat, vegetables, maybe some fruit, but really no like processed foods or really not much grains, anything like that. In addition, if someone wanted to emulate the paleo type of exercise routine, they might adopt some like HIIT type training, so high intensity for short bursts. Things like sprinting and jumping would have been activities that our ancestors did while they were hunting. So the book Paleofantasy by Dr. Zook takes a deep dive into this obsession, and it aims to really better understand how our ancestors actually lived. So a second main point of Dr. Zook's book was that evolution is continuous. So she proposed that humans are constantly evolving and that evolution actually occurs much faster than we realize. So this idea suggests that we are biologically very different than our caveman ancestors that we might assume to be like. And a big part of this is that Dr. Zook believes that we're not finished evolving. To say that we're just like our caveman ancestors would imply that we finished evolving and we've been finished evolving for thousands of years, which she claims is not the case. Along the way, she goes through debunking a lot of scientific myths about how our ancestors really lived. She uses scientific evidence and research to discredit theories that have been widely supported for decades. She poses questions like, did the real paleo diet resemble what today's paleo diet is? And she seeks to understand the real truth about our ancestors' lifestyle. And this ranges from the paleo diet to their exercise and even our ancestors' love life. And finally, she go hand in hand with the evolution. She says that humans will live much differently thousands of years from now than they do right now. And that's because, like I said, evolution is continuous and we are constantly evolving. So the book gives an informative look into what humans might be like, in future generations and thousands of years from now.
Okay, so to go into the author's thesis, throughout this book, Dr. Zook provides a variety of paleo fantasies and argues that human evolution is continuous and it's never stopped. And with these paleo fantasies, there are a series of examples with scientific evidence that she provides. And some of these include human health, family dynamics, diet, and the complexities of love. And she shows that how evolution impacts each of these. And she also discredits the idea that humans have finished evolving and believes that there's little scientific evidence to back this up and considers it more of a myth. And then another point that she brings up is that change causes more change and it's not necessarily considered to be a disaster.
So our first piece of evidence is based on evolution's impact on human health and diet. Dr. Zook explores the activity of the genes and the dynamics of disease resistance. She discusses the relation between sedentary lifestyle and disease spread, and the idea that agriculture's sedentary lifestyle contributed to the rise of infectious agents, which fostered the spread of diseases. She links this with gene susceptibility. Our genetic susceptibility to diseases is traced back to our Paleolithic ancestors, sharing DNA with hamsters and bacteria. She also talks about adaptable genes, highlighting the CCR5 genes. These genes code for a protein connected to HIV resistance, which evolved through smallpox selection. Next, Dr. Zook explores the evolution of our ability to digest milk, highlighting the coevolution of lactose-persistent genes. Newfound genetic testing supports the coevolution theory, demonstrating how early humans adapted to digest lactose, leading to lactose-persistent genes. As mentioned priorly, Dr. Zook is not a fan of the paleo diet, and her research compares it with other various diets. And then based on her research, the paleo diet is ranked last out of all of them. As far as strengths for her argument, the chapter uses diverse examples such as the CCR5 gene to illustrate the complexity of genes in response to evolutionary pressures. And she also supports her argument with research findings, providing a solid foundation for the claims that she made. And then as far as weaknesses, the chapter introduces the adaptability of genes, but the complexity of genetic adaptations and the potential unintended consequences are not thoroughly explored. And then she also provided a limited amount of research and exploration of other diets. Our next piece of evidence is based on the claim that populations and species change rapidly. Dr. Zook discusses her credible experiences with her own research on the evolution of a cricket species in Hawaii. Dr. Zook's research on crickets revealed a rapid evolutionary response to the dilemma of attracting mates while avoiding parasitic flies. Within only 5 years and approximately 20 cricket generations, the crickets evolved with only 10% capable of singing. This underscores the idea that rapid evolution may be the norm, challenging traditional views of a slow process. In addition, she discusses other researchers' findings on finches, guppies, and stickleback fish. For strengths in her claim, she is successful in illustrating the dynamic and unpredictable nature of evolution and also challenges the idea that change leads to disaster. However, her claim is limited to examples in nature, and we know that application to human scenarios may vary.
Evolution's impacts on love and family. Dr. Zuck discusses sexual selection and how it is thought to favor the males that can compete with other males to get an opportunity to mate at all. Strength with this is that her claim is based off of scientific research and observations of our closest relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos. A weakness of this, though, is that gender roles have evolved a lot more over time, and the standard needs that men and women used to do have changed greatly. The research was also done on chimpanzees and bonobos, and although they are closest relatives, they are not humans. Throughout the readings, the book, Dr. Zuck talks about how back in earlier evolution, the provocative notion that human men were genetically programmed to stray, while women's genes made them more faithful. Chapter 7 goes into sexual selection and notes that females' reproductive success is limited by the number of children that they can produce and raise, while males' reproductive success is limited by the number of mates that they can acquire. She then argues against the idea that humans have not had time to evolve in response to modern pressures and circumstances. Zuck explains that gender roles are not fixed and have evolved greatly over time. My opinion on the book was that it was very eye-opening to read Paleofantasy. It's good to see all of the similarities that we have nowadays with our ancestors, and how much we have changed and how much we're never going to stop changing I also believe that the human race is going to keep evolving as time goes on, and that we're going to still, in prior years, see some traditions that we do now.
Overall, I found the book to be enjoyable and I would recommend it to others. It's tailored for both general and academic audiences. Dr. Zook skillfully combines informativeness with engaging storytelling, which fosters an environment for critical thinking. Her credibility is further enhanced by her research background, and the incorporation of personal experiences also strengthens the overall persuasiveness of her narrative. Additionally, the book's well-structured chapters seamlessly flow, facilitating a coherent and comprehensive progression of ideas.
Okay, so I really enjoyed reading this book. It really made me think about human evolution, both an anthropological and a biological perspective. And I feel like I had a good understanding going in from some of the bio classes I've taken at Purdue. But I do think that the target audience could be for anyone interested in the topic she brings up, because it's a pretty easy read, which is nice. It's really stood out to me how she explained her research and argument through providing relatable examples. One chapter that really stood out to me was chapter 4, and it was called The Perfect Paleofantasy Diet, Milk. And I found myself most interested in this because she talks about whether or not coevolution occurred for humans to have lactase persistence. And she also brings up the mutation that makes people unable to break down lactose. But I still found this really eye-opening, and I liked how she explained how we're continuously developing and how we still have a future of many genetic changes.
All right, and for my opinion, I also found the book to be a pretty quick and easy read. I enjoyed Dr. Zook's writing style, as it was pretty story-like, but really informative throughout. However, when I started the book, I was expecting it to be a little bit different than what it was, just based on the title. I expected to kind of learn about the traditional paleo diet and the advantages and disadvantages to living and eating like our ancestors did. But instead, Dr. Zook kind of embraced the fact that we don't really know everything. Actually know very little about how our ancestors lived. And I found that approach kind of refreshing, as she just kind of used some of the scientific evidence and current research to back her claims and discredit some of the long accepted theories. I learned that the ancestral diet and lifestyle is a lot different than what I had expected it to be, just from what I had read and listened to prior. I thought that her analysis was really practical and insightful. There were times throughout the book where you don't really get a concrete answer, because we just don't know. We don't know how our ancestors lived thousands of years ago, and we probably will never know for sure. But we can draw, more concrete conclusions. Overall, like I said, the book was very different than what I expected, but I found it to be pretty thought-provoking and intriguing. That's all we got. Thanks for joining us.